G'day everybody, this is part 4 of 5. So today's video will end up with all of the buildings glued on and the dirt down. The first part of it is just finishing off the assembling of the roof in the milliner's store and creating a cactus. So for the roof I just cut some extra, there's no idea what it's going to be in this building, so I just cut some pieces of cardboard and glued them in to give it a base to glue to, and then glued another bit of cardboard in the top and painted it the same grey as I'd done on the rest of the buildings. As with all of my buildings, I always paint the inside black when they've got windows, that way that there's no extra reflection. And this is doing the brown wash that I said in the last video would get done to the chairs and to the floor of the sheriff's office. Now apparently the photos last time got out of order, so the chairs with their little stain on them and the floorboards showing up in the sheriff's thing once the door is on and the glass has been stuck in. So they came up really well. I'm really pleased with the way they ended up, and they look really good stuck on the front veranda of the sheriff's office. It was at this sort of point that I'm starting to feel like it's coming together and I might even get it done in time. The horse rail, tie-up rail, I just went and found a stick that was outside that was weathered already to a right colour and looked like it'd be about the size of a log that they'd make a tie rail to. And then I just glued it together. I gave it a little bit of a sand so that the tops of the posts had a little round groove in them, and that made it easy to glue together. This is just doing some finer detail work on the sheriff's office, and then the signs are on and everything's together. Windows are in. Once again, I sped this up before I realised that I had a slow down shot, and so I apologise for the stutteriness of the slow-mo bit. After this, yeah, there was lots and lots of details to cut out. I had the sheriff's signs to glue into the sign so that it could go on. I had the curtains to cut out for each of the windows. In both the shops they had a little blue curtain that you pull across for, I suppose, just privacy, and then there was also blinds and lace curtains in the milliner's store. In the sheriff's office there was also a whole bunch of posters. So this is just making the little poster board for the front that goes in between the door and the window that's got the rewards and the things. So I cut all of those out. This is cutting out all the little curtains. There's just lots of cutting in this, so I've cut out some of the actual cutting because it went for about 25 minutes. After everything was cut out, I then got my trusty paper clips again, bent them straight, made them to length, and then glued the little curtains to them so that they were on a curtain rail that I could then glue into the windows. So that gave them a little bit of, they stood back a little bit from the window, weren't just glued onto it, and gave it a little bit of volume. The sheriff's office had 2 blinds that were half rolled down, one for each window, so they went on after I'd put the little curtains in. I also made for the sheriff's office pretend walls, so because you actually do see a lot more through the windows, I, as I said, watched 3 minutes of the movie 10 times and got some screenshots of the inside of the building and tried to fudge a perspective sort of version of what the sheriff's office looked like from the various shots that were taken. Very convenient of them not to do some straight on wall shots for me to be able to do it easily 40 years later, 50 years later. The curtain for the milliner's store, the lace curtain, ended up covering up the majority of the window, so the black painting on the inside of that was precautionary, and the curtain does a really good job of screening it off anyway. The sheriff's office has the back wall to be glued on when it goes onto the bookends themselves, so I left it off for the time being just to get it to allow it to dry and to not have a problem when I was gluing it on. I wasn't sure whether I was going to glue it to the actual the bookends or glue it to the sheriff's building. So after the painting of the mountain range, which was just referencing a couple of the shots from over the screenshots from the movie and working out sort of what you would have seen behind from the things that I didn't know. It's a pretty basic backdrop. Then there was making the cactus. Now I haven't had to make a cactus before, so this was a bit of fun. I drew a whole lot of just cactusy shapes based on the picture that I'm working on there, and then super glued them together just at different angles. I made one long cactusy looking thing that had the base for glue and everything else too. Ran out of some little ones, ran out of some cardboard, had to get a different colour, but all in all just put it together so that when it was together it looked similar to the pictures in the movie. I think there's a closer up view of that coming up now once I've finished gluing it. And yeah, here we go. That's what it looked like. It's just dodgy cardboard going everywhere. I suppose I probably could have got some really fine fishing line and made some spikes on it, but I didn't do that. I just opted for it to be a child-friendly cactus, a cactus that you can give to people that won't stab them in the fingers. Gentle cactus. The paint job for that was fairly simple, just 2 lots of green, wet on wet, and dabbing it around so that it looked cactusy, and it came up really well. I was happy with the way that it looked compared to the one in the movies. It has a couple of rocks around it in the movie, so I have a go-to rock. I found a rock in the yard years ago, made a mould of it, and when I have spare resin I usually pour another one, so I always have a bit of a rock lying around, and it cuts up and goes really well. I had a look at where everything was going to go, and this is now the gluing down and the laying out. The sheriff's office had its back wall already glued in at this stage. That was the decision that I ended up with. And then glued the rocks down, glued the cactus down, glued the horse rail in. It had some spikes in the bottom of it, and I forgot to mention that I did actually put some spiky bits up through the bottom of the posts when I glued it onto the veranda originally. So although the rafters, it kept it in place, keep it from being wobbly, I did have to actually spike it down. So here's just a couple of shots of the thing. That most of the construction was done here. When I put the milliner's store down onto the bookend, I thought that it didn't really finish as well as I wanted it to, so I did decide to make another little extension of the veranda off onto the ground. And so it was a really basic build. I haven't shown you much of it. I grabbed 2 toothpicks, I stuck them into a bit of foam just so that when I put the glue on them it didn't glue to the paper that I was using. Stuck the boards on and then painted them and dry brushed them the same as I had done with the rest of the building. Once I glued everybody down and the rocks were in place where they were going to go to work with the cactus, it was just a matter of painting underneath where the sand's going to go. I always colour, even when I'm pouring sand and stuff down, I always colour underneath it, just in case you get a thin bit. I find that the colour works well. I also did some shading with some different colours on it to try and vary it. Again, just in case the dirt didn't cover really well, so that there was a little bit of lightness and darkness based on what I could see on the pictures. I grabbed some dirt from a coffee van where I work at sometimes, and there's a bit of a funny story to that, but I won't. If you see me in person, ask me. So I got some dirt from there because it seemed to be the right colour for what I wanted it to be for a Western cowboy scene dirt, and I used some stocking just to make it really not so sandy and more powdery. I put some glue on around the posts and on the veranda and stuff to make sure that some of the dirt stuck down. So this is, yeah, just common dirt dust. Because I've been around the coffee trailer where people walk, all of the dirt's been trampled down really fine. So I didn't really, was thinking about using sand, but I didn't want to use the usual sand texture I did because I thought it was a little bit too coarse. So I went with the finer stuff, and it came up really, really well. I'm hoping now that the mower that just started outside isn't registering louder than I am. Here are some basic shots of the put together, and I might have to go and close the window when all this is done, we'll find out. Coming now is making the hide. I just used some green stuff. I've got the reference pictures there, so any of the animal rights people, no animal was harmed in the making of this video or of this model. This isn't a real hide at all. I didn't kill any small anythings. There were no small tiny 1/36 scale cows injured in the making of this video. Just two knives, because I had to get, it's very scratchy and pulled apart. I just used the scalpel and the hobby knife. It took several goes to get it to where I thought that it was thin enough, thick enough, hangy enough, the right shape compared to the movie, but in the end I got there. So that's it for this one. Next video is paint the cowboys and all the glamour shots. Thank you for watching, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. We'll see you next time.